Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network, of course, partnered with Lower Broad Hockey. That is Emma Lingan and Braden Gall. And we are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, although mostly just Sinkers Beverages tonight after my kids are home from school all day. We've already been outside twice. Emma, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I have not been outside at all today. So.
It must be nice. It must be nice. No, I love the snow. It's beautiful. It's not as beautiful as the last snow we got. But lots of stuff to discuss today on the show, not the least of which is my daughter pulling a tooth this morning by herself, my 6-year-old, and me having to get them in front of a television right before the show started. So a little chaotic this morning. Here we go. Kevin, good to see you. Happy snow day. I love the snow. My wife likes looking at the snow from inside the house. But now that my kids have the right gear, Emma, they are obsessed. It only took us like 5 years to get them the right gear, and I knew it was going to work. But now they're obsessed. So it's 10 a.m. and I've already been outside twice. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, no,
Cheers.
I mean, I like this kind of snow. This is good. I think I was in Massachusetts over the weekend and was witness to what they in New England were calling a bad winter storm, which made me take it a little bit more seriously. But then the people who live there were acting like it's nothing. Like going out. I mean, it was snow, but with ice on top of it. And like we were out, I was with my friend and we were going out and like running errands and stuff. And I'm like, wow, if this was Nashville, this would never happen.
No. I go up for Wisconsin. I go up to Wisconsin to go to Green Bay Packers games as much as I can. We try to go once a year. Me and my father and my brother and my cousin and my uncle were all big Packers fans. We try to go up. I went up for the Titans game a couple years ago, and it was like 26 degrees and snowing. And like I like that. I don't want to be in it all the time, but I don't mind it. And everyone else there is just like my dad and my brother are like, oh, like my dad lives here. My brother lives in Charleston. Now he's been in New York a long time, but people here aren't prepared for that kind of stuff. People like I saw an old guy who's like 80 years old walking around in a t-shirt, like with his windows down. He was driving his truck with his windows down in like through middle of Green Bay, Wisconsin when it was like 29 degrees. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh yeah, going to the game.
It's built different. Built different up there.
Yeah, just ridiculous. All right, so the Predators have acquired a few pieces that may be hockey players. We're not sure. We'll discuss that coming up. We've got the Four Nation face-off, which I've got a lot of random questions for you, and I need you to hopefully answer most of them for me. But mostly, we'll look ahead to can the United States actually beat Canada in match number 2 in the one that counts, or did we already win the one that counts? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who's healthy for both teams. Should be very interesting on Thursday night. Cannot wait for it. It's going to be great. One of the best hockey games I've ever seen. That happened after you and I did the show. I know Adam and I did a show on Sunday about this right at the morning after the game. But it was just spectacular, so I can't wait to get your thoughts on it. Of course, there's lots of injury news for the Nashville Predators, some good, some not so good, so we'll get to all of that as well. Otherwise, if your kids are home today and you need I don't normally drink during the week, but I might need a cocktail tonight, so Sinkers Beverages it is, folks. Sinkers Beverages, craft beer retailer of the year in Nashville, Tennessee, 4-time liquor store of the year, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue of the year, best brisket in the city. Just 2 great local businesses. Go support good local businesses. All right, let's start with the 2 new players because I just want to get them out of the way. Because, I need you to tell me how excited or not excited people should be for acquiring a player who is a first-round pick, but it scores like a gazillion goals and points in the AHL with like a negative 60-plus rating, a minus 61 rating. I think he's had 1 shift in the NHL this year. I don't know how many games. He's not played very many games over the last 5 seasons in the NHL. He's Russian forward. And I need you to tell me what are the Predators getting from 2 waiver wire claims, basically?
Well, Grigory Derisenko, the forward you were talking about, we got in a trade for future considerations. Just that guy.
Considerations.
Never know that guy, but so Derisenko, this is a depth move. You'll see him in Milwaukee. Do not expect him to be in Nashville anytime soon, barring some like mass catastrophe. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this is sort of to counteract what Barry Trotz, I think, he talked about, that if the season didn't go well for Nashville, they were going to start calling up more of their young talent and see what they have. So you call up your Joachim Kemmels and your Svechkovs, your LaRues, etc. Well, once you start doing that, then you have to backfill in Milwaukee and some depth there. So that's kind of what that's how I see this move. It's really just more of a backfilling situation for Milwaukee. He's not signed long term. It's just kind of a band-aid for right now. Not much more to say about that, to be honest.
So the defenseman, of course, I guess we need to talk about Jeremy Lauzon first, because this is sort of a corresponding move to that. This is a big bummer if you're big on the trade deadline. And Adam and I talked about it over the weekend. I think it's partly why he did not put Jeremy Lauzon in his article on Lower Broad Hockey was, they're starting to hear rumblings that this might not be a thing that is like he's not back by the deadline. And sure enough, it sounds like he's out for the rest of the season. So they go get Andreas England. Am I saying that correctly? Swedish defenseman, 6'4", 200 pounds, very similar, a defense-only guy. This is, again, a backfill move. I think Lauzon's the more interesting conversation, though, here.
Yeah, so Lauzon, we got confirmation, recovery timeline. He'll be out 4 to 6 months with that lower body injury that has had him on IR kind of off and on. He first got injured back in November, missed, I think, 6 games, then came back, re-aggravated that same injury in that New Year's Eve game against Minnesota, left that game early, and we haven't seen him since. So, there was a lot of kind of, well, maybe they're just letting him rest it through the break and we'll reevaluate it after that. But now we're getting the 4 to 6 months update, which means that he has either had or will be having surgery on something with a recovery timeline like that. So tough blow for sure. You miss his size and his physicality. We've seen that, that's immediately what I thought when the Preds picked up England off of waivers, because you look at his body type, like you said, 6'4", 200 pounds. I mean, that's like almost an identical body type to Jeremy Lauzon. He's big, he's lengthy, he is, he has physicality that he racks up the penalty minutes, but so did Jeremy Lauzon. So I think that this is, again, sort of a band-aid move to fix, you have someone to put in there for the rest of the year. I talked to him at practice yesterday, and I personally was relieved to hear him say, when he described his game, to hear him say defense only. I'm like, thank God, because this team needs that. And they don't need any more offensive defensemen, because God, Justin Barron, oh man. I won't get into that. Justin Barron's becoming like the new Luke Shen, and I think Luke Shen has actually had a good year.
Hero. Luke Shen's a hero compared to Justin Barron.
I know. And so I think that, you get some size, some length. Again, I got, we were seeing a lot of questions leading up to the break with guys, with Adam Wilsby out and with Lauzon out, of course, that, they're calling up Kevin Gravel. Well, why is Spencer Stastny still in Milwaukee? Why is Mark Delgado still in Milwaukee? Because Kevin Gravel is much larger and he's got the length, he's got the size, he plays a much more similar game to what they're sort of lacking back there. And so I think that getting Andreas England in there, he is, he can kind of help counterbalance that a little bit. And I talked to Andrew Brunette yesterday, and he essentially confirmed that for me. So
yeah, there you go. It feels like, what's the old thing? And I don't actually think this is true necessarily in quarterbacking in college football, because I think you can play with more than one quarterback. But the old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. It feels like well, if you have 9 defensemen, you might have none. It's kind of how this feels, because they just have so many bodies. And I don't, certainly if Lauzon was healthy, he would be clearly a top 4 defenseman for the team. If Alexander Carrier was on the team, he'd clearly be a top 4 defenseman on the team. And I know that I have said this, so I'm not going to say, I'm not attacking anyone else or the coaching staff or the front office, but I have said this, I'm very intrigued by a lot of the prospects in particular, how many young guys have gotten sort of a kind of moved through the system in like a traditional way. And maybe that doesn't count Gravel. Maybe it doesn't. I mean, I don't. Del Gaizo probably counts in there, but it's Stasny number one, and then you go Willsby and maybe a little bit of Blankenberg mixed in, and it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like they kind of. Nobody has grabbed the spot. Nobody has done the thing that you want to see. Even though I was very excited about it, and I still think there's reason for optimism. What you want is one of these guys who just be in the lineup every single night for 22 minutes, 19 minutes, whatever, full stop the rest of the way. And injuries aside, because I know Willsby's been banged up, and it should be, and we'll get an update on him coming back. It just, somebody's got to, like, you have opportunities here. This is an opportunity for a young player to prove that they belong. You're seeing Svechkov and LaRue take that opportunity. Some of the defensemen need to, and I know they're not as pedigreed as those two guys, but they need to take the opportunity. This is your chance. And I don't know, the Stasny thing is very odd. It has been from the beginning. You just got to kind of keep an eye on that and let it play out. But otherwise, I think, Blankenberg at plus whatever he's at right now, +9, leading the team by a large margin. He's kind of the only one that's been like, no, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be every time.
Yeah. He's the one that has kind of taken the spot and been like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And I think, looking at the defense and looking at the rest of those guys, like you said, with Stasny, you got to keep in mind that, like you said, bizarre, unconventional situation with him. He did kind of come back to the NHL very quickly. And so I wasn't upset that they sent him back down to get some more time, because you got to think about it. Remember, he went to arbitration over the summer and came away with that 2-year contract. The second year of his contract is a one-way. So that means this year he's got a 2-way contract where he can still play in the AHL. The Predators won't have to pay him as much when he plays in the AHL. Why not, especially after everything that's gone on with him, why not give him more of that conditioning and developing time in the AHL while you still can and get him ready? Because what we were seeing from him before he took this time away was that he was ready to be an NHL defenseman. Yeah. And I think this, we had a little detour
physically,
this year.
Physically.
Yeah, right. And so I think, we had this little detour this year, and if he can be back in the AHL and getting those reps and getting that conditioning, then there's no reason that he can't be, a steady part of this lineup next season. So I think that one makes sense to me. I love Mark Del Gaizo. I'm a big fan of his, but again, his game is not really what they need right now.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm excited about England being kind of a steady defense. He did say defense only, and then he kind of backed up a little bit. He goes, well, defense first. And it's no, defense only. We'll take that right now, because I don't think Justin Barron knows he's a defenseman.
And I would expect a defense only defenseman to back up during his answers. Like, that's the right thing to do. So, all right. So Josh, good to see you. Look, I'm in full dad mode today, Emma. Okay. Josh, good to see you. Stasny's only 25. Preds don't let prospects come up until they're at least 26 or 27, says Kevin. That's not true. They got a bunch of young guys out there this year on offense in particular, which is strange. So a couple other things from injury news. It looks like you tell me what you saw from practice. Luke Evangelista, Adam Wilsby appear to be close.
Yeah, so at practice yesterday, so Luke Evangelista, Adam Wilsby, and Mark Jankowski, who had all missed time. Jankowski was moved to IR right before the break, but that was, they called up Weisblatt and Gravel and all of that. So it was mostly paper transactions. But I think that we saw all three of those guys, full participants in practice yesterday. Asked Andrew Brunette about it. He said, it's the first practice back. We're still considering them kind of day to day at this point. It wasn't a super physical practice. It was just kind of to get the legs moving. It was a lot of drills and stuff. And so they were full participants, but there wasn't a ton of heavy contact, I would say. So he said, we're going to kind of gradually build up that throughout the week and then assess from there. So they're still kind of considered day to day, but I'd say the fact that they were all participating is a good sign, and that the break and the rest was good for them, especially like we said, Wilsby. really, could use his presence on the back end as well. So I think that that's all good. But yeah, we saw them. We saw England in his first practice. His gear had just gotten there that morning, so he was, I'm sure, having quite a day. But he looked good. He skates really well for a guy his size.
Are you a living, breathing hockey player? We'll give you a chance.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's where we're at with this.
And we did not see, for obvious reasons, UC Saros, Philip Forsberg, and Gus Nyquist. They had just played the day before in the Four Nations face-off. Matt Murray was there from Milwaukee. He hasn't been called up or anything. He was just helping out in practice to be the second goalie with UC Sonnen. So yeah,
it's C-Mace is just out wandering around with Hal somewhere.
Yeah.
So anything else from practice in particular before we get to Four Nations and the trade deadline? And because I think Forsberg, Saros, and Nyquist, for me, there's plenty of news there. Of course, we'll discuss the injury and how they played, but that's all tied to the Four Nations. Is there anything else for practice that stood out to you from a development standpoint, injuries, line rushes? It's hard to tell. To your point, I think it's smart to ease them back in. They will play 4 games at home in like 6 nights, so they've got they're coming out of the gate hot, coming up here in just a couple of days. So anything else?
Yeah, I think it's just, obviously they didn't have a full squad. They weren't really doing a ton of, full squad drills yesterday. There was a lot of 3-on-3, a lot of 3-on-3 stuff. I think, you're not necessarily working on the power play or the penalty kill or something because you're missing some important guys to be able to do that. But a lot of it was just kind of fundamentals. And I think that was something that, we talked to Andrew Brunette about. And, the question was something along the lines of, have you considered making tweaks to this system, like changing more of what you're expecting from these guys? And he said, honestly, not really. What we're more focused on and what, the bigger concern was that they were getting away, not from the system, but they were getting away from their fundamentals in the execution of the system. So we're kind of going back to basics a little bit and working on a lot of fundamentals in practice. Again, he said it kind of felt like training camp a little bit out there, that you're just kind of starting from not square one, but it's a little bit of, the biggest benefit of this break, especially when the team has had the first half that it has, is to actually just not think about hockey for a little bit.
Yeah.
And he said, you really, guys were able to kind of turn their brains off, and that's a good thing. And, the vibe yesterday, I think it was good. Guys, had energy. They seemed, pretty jazzed to be back. They were quick to get out of the locker room. I don't think they were super excited to be talking to the media yet, but
they're like, oh, this was nice.
Yeah.
No games in media for about a 10-day period of time. This was great.
Yeah, no, but I think, some of the guys looking a little tan from their vacations. I think it was probably good refresh for them. But yeah, the vibes were good.
Yeah, there's not a lot of daylight and sunlight in a hockey player's life during the regular season. Like wintertime is the season. You're indoors, you're practicing indoors, you're on planes, you're on buses, you're working out indoors, you're watching film indoors, you play games indoors. Like just not a lot of sunlight, not a lot of calcium.
I thought it was funny because when we were talking to England, and he was like, I forget who asked him, were you on vacation when you found out that you had been claimed? Because it was, the start of the Four Nations break, and most of these guys were on vacation. And he goes, yeah. And we're thinking he's going to be like, yeah, I was in Cabo or Turks and Caicos.
Like I was in Detroit.
He said, I was in Denver. And I'm like,
Denver's a great place to hang on. Denver's an amazing place to vacation.
No, it is. It is. But for the reasons that you just said, that it's like you're a hockey player, you spend so much time in the cold, you automatically go to Denver at least once a year as a hockey player.
He is from the Sweden, so he probably loves skiing, I imagine. And Denver's a pretty dope place to go skiing in the wintertime this time of year. So.
I'm not knocking it. I just
you're
thought
judging him.
I'm not judging him. I thought it was funny because it was unexpected. That's not usually one of the destinations that you hear.
So you got claimed off. You play in LA. You've been claimed. You're from Sweden. You know, you're a world traveler. Your team, your country's playing in the Four Nations tournament, and you've been claimed by the Nashville Predators. What'd you do this break? Oh, I was in Kansas City.
Yeah,
like at least Denver has a tourist industry.
Yeah.
At least
Yes.
it would have been hilarious. He's like, no, I was in Columbus, Ohio. Like,
yeah.
all right. Well, good stuff there from practice. Good to see them back on the ice, of course, and good to have them back in town and back in the building. That leads us, of course, to the three guys that are now not quite back, but will be back. And UC Saros, we'll start there. I don't have we're not going to talk about whether or not Barry Trotz should have resigned him or not. Done with that. I also don't know how much, like Adam and I talked about this on the Lower Broad Hockey Extra Edition. The loss to the USA and how he played did, like, I think his XG was just like slightly worse than like the actual performance. So like, it wasn't like he was really to be blamed there. The Finnish defense just crumbled in the third period of that game. Certainly Lankinen played much better in replacement. So I don't know what you take away from Saros. Yeah, go for it.
I don't want to reopen the whole can of worms about Saros and his future with the Predators,
but
we all know where I stand on that. However, I think it is important. We need to go back to this, Saros versus Lankinen conversation. It is very interesting to me how the general narrative around Saros versus Lankinen in the Four Nations face-off is that Finland's poor defense was considered an excuse for Saros. And then Lankinen comes in and plays well against Sweden, which, again, no disrespect, but Sweden does not have the offensive firepower that the U.S. does.
But they're clearly better than the U.S. So,
well, yes, based on one game they are.
Results have to matter, Emma. College football brain. Like, results matter.
Yeah. Okay. So just looking at the roster altogether, Sweden does not have the offensive firepower that the U.S. does. You know who does have offensive firepower? Canada. And I said this going into the Canada-Finland game. I was like, I hate saying this out loud, but I want, because I love Kevin Lankinen, but I do stand by this. I said, I'm like, I almost want Lankinen to get shelled in this game, because it will vindicate UC Saros a little bit.
No, it doesn't. It
doesn't. Let me finish. So what goes on? He gets shelled. He gets pulled. Saros comes in, does not give up a goal. He looks really good. He looks really solid. But everyone, it seems like the narrative has been so much nicer to Lankinen and being like, well, the poor guy, the defense in front of him was just,
from whom? Can I ask? From whom?
Just the general narrative, like social media.
You're reading social media again, aren't you? You're out there on the streets.
But it's important to know what people are saying so I can come on here and tell them that they're being ridiculous. So they're saying that.
Well, you weren't even rooting for the United States, according to Twitter. So,
oh Jesus, I'm rooting for good hockey. Okay, everyone, leave me alone. The whole
Twitter can't hurt you. Twitter can't hurt you.
The whole thing with Lankinen, it's like, well, the poor guy, he just didn't have the defense. Well, it was the same bad defense that was in front of Saros against the USA, but everyone's like, Saros is terrible.
I have not heard that. Everybody I've talked to that I think is smart about this stuff is like, no, the Finnish defense was terrible. USA's great. They're on a mission. It's the best USA team ever, et cetera, et cetera. And
everyone who's smart, yes, but I'm not talking to smart people. I'm telling the stupid people that they're stupid. I know.
Well, that is something that you will do until the end of your life if you want to do it, because we will never run out of them ever. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
I know.
But I think now, if you want to sort of step to your point, like step back and like talk about the conversation, like it is just, and this to me is predictable from the Lankinen and Saros thing. One guy wasn't signed here, wanted to go start. Was again, the truth of the matter was on the market for way longer than he anticipated. He got I don't want to say lucky, but an injury happens. He gets signed, and he's played a really good season. And he was pretty good last year for the team. And I don't think there's any great. Saros has had a great start and then has struggled. The defense has been terrible. The team is terrible. They're one of the 3 worst teams in the league. The defense is injured and terrible. Did I mention that the team is terrible? And like, of course, they go in as like the worst team in the tournament, and they lose some games by giving up a bunch of goals because their defense is terrible. And it's just predictable. It's just, to me, it's just very simple. It's very predictable that the guy who's had the good season that didn't stay with the Preds, is going to get a little bit more benefit of the doubt than the guy who's been on the Preds and not been as good as people wanted him to be. And so I just think it's like none of the things that happen in these 3 games are relevant to me at all. Except for Gus Nyquist getting hurt. That one matters. Yes. Otherwise, Forsberg doesn't score a goal. Irrelevant to me. Don't care.
Forsberg.
None of it matters.
Not only did he not score a goal, he did not have a very good tournament. Like he just, and not even just on the score sheet. I mean, if you're watching the games, like he had some. Yeah. Let's just say Sweden got very lucky with some of the turnovers that he committed throughout this tournament. Again, I'm not losing any sleep over that. I'm not going to look at that and be like, well, Philip Forsberg is terrible now and they should trade him. Like,
they have like 4 months of practice to get ready for the tournament. No, they had like 3 days of practice to get ready for the tournament. Like,
so I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about Saros. I've never been worried about Saros, but that's that. Gus, yes. So Nyquist scored a goal for Sweden against the USA. Because Sweden is better than the USA, obviously. And but then he left the game with an apparent injury.
He got hit in the leg with a slap shot, right? Like real close to the goal.
Yeah. It just looked like not great. And it's one of those things. It's not like he couldn't put weight on the leg or anything like that. It's just, especially in a game that more or less didn't matter because USA was already in the final, Sweden was already out. Why have him play hurt at that point? So he comes out. We still don't know anything about the severity of it. It could just be a big nothing burger. It could just be like, hey, let's not tempt fate here and let's just shut him down for the rest of the game. Or it could be something more serious. We don't know. We will find out this week when he's back, hopefully practicing with the team.
This could not, with Lauzon's news.
I know.
For like 2 of your biggest 4, let's call it 2 of the biggest 4 trade chips. Let's say McCarron, Lauzon, Nyquist, and Sissons. Maybe, I guess O'Reilly might be in there, but I think we're kind of all in agreement that they shouldn't necessarily move him. It's just unfortunate. It's just unlucky. Lauzon could have been moved for something solid, probably the best offer of any of the players potentially. Nyquist was already going to be kind of a hard sell. You're going to have to sell last year to people, but he's a very good puck handler, goal scorer, can enter the zone, is a really solid, like if you need him to be a second line winger. But I hope that this doesn't affect that opportunity, because that's really all that I care about. It's like, if I'm Barry Trotz, I'm a Predators fan, all I care about is what can I get for Gus Nyquist right now today, and hopefully he's fine.
Here's what I look at with that. I think that, yes, you got to sell him based on last year, but also his playoff performance throughout his career has been very, very strong. So I think that that's going to be good. I would also point out that, assuming this isn't anything season ending for him, if we're operating under that assumption right now, the year before he signed in Nashville, he was traded to Minnesota while injured. And he did not play in the regular season with them. He came and joined them in their playoff run, and I think he put up like 4 points in their playoff run. Like he still was a contributor. So I am less concerned if he was, as long as this isn't something super serious long term. Yeah. I'm less concerned about it because he's done it before and it's been successful.
And I think one thing fans, and I'm not picking on fans, media does this too. One thing that happens when it comes to evaluating a player, especially a veteran who's been around a very long time, I think this actually happens in the draft for the NFL as well, is teams have an evaluation of that guy. Whether it's a draft pick for the NFL, like they grade him at this, let's call it, 79 or an 84 or a 91. Like, I'm just using a Madden rating for the sake of understanding the conversation here. They grade him. If a piece of news happens about a prospect, it probably doesn't change the grade that much. It may change how you think about the process of acquiring that player, but it probably doesn't change what you think of the player. Same thing with Nyquist. He has a track record that speaks for itself a large body of work, and every single general manager and every single coach knows what that body of work is, what he can do for their team, whether or not he fits in. They don't look at one chunk of time on a bad team that's had everything go wrong and say, well, I don't like him anymore. They're going to grade him on being a 35-year-old player who's played for like 14 years or whatever. Like he is evaluated as what he is. And I think it may affect the work Barry Trotz has to do to sell him, to sort of get maximum value for him. But I don't think any general manager who wanted him before is going to look at the season this year or even the little injury and be like, we don't want him now. If he's healthy and he's on a new team, he will help that team the same way he has helped every team for 12 or whatever number of years. So I do think that sometimes fans and media get, and I think media is just as guilty of this, where we just get caught up like, oh, he's had a bad year, that's going to hurt his trade value. Okay, maybe you get like a fourth instead of a third. So yes, does that count as hurting the trade value? Yes. It doesn't mean that other teams don't evaluate him accurately, is what I'm getting at, I guess. So
yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to point that out because I think people are like, oh, a news story comes out about a draft prospect. They're like, oh, he's off people's boards now. And it's like, well, no, he's graded out exactly the way they've graded him out after working on this for like a year. This is where he's at. Okay. All right. I want to talk Four Nations. I want to talk deadline a little bit more here, but I want to make sure everybody knows, of course, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, our two great and amazing local sponsors. Look, if you want Black Hawk Farms Wagyu beef, okay, the best brisket in the city from Wednesday today to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., go get you some Black Hawk Farms Wagyu beef brisket from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. The ribs are spectacular. The chicken's great. The sausage is amazing. The pulled pork's great. Tony's Magic Green Beans, it's all great. But the brisket is the king. And I didn't grow up a brisket guy. I grew up a ribs guy. Are you pork, like pulled pork? Isn't that your favorite one?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. You got to go get the brisket, Emma. You got to go get the brisket. It's amazing. Spectacular. It's very real and spectacular. Many people are talking about it. Okay, go to also swing by Sinkers Beverages if you would like to shop at the liquor store of the year. Again, these are award-winning places that support this business. I don't know if we have any awards, but whatever. We'll see.
I mean, I'm the hardest working woman in hockey, so there's that.
I do need to start introducing you that way. I apologize that.
Yeah.
I apologize that I have not been introducing
some respect on my name, please. Thank you.
Okay. Queen Emma.
Well, no. Easy. I'm not even the queen in my own household. That's my dog. So
no, that's valid. There you go, Kevin. I was waiting. I was setting you up, Kevin. There you go. All right, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Please go support them. And if you're in town, seriously, it's a fantastic meal. You will not be disappointed. And of course, Sinkers Beverages has been with us for a very, very long time. And Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville as well. They've been supporting the Hendersonville sort of Gallatin, Madison area as well. So make sure you support them. Over 50 years of service in that area. So go on and check them out. We do appreciate all of that. All right, I want to go Four Nations here. I mean, first of all, I want to talk USA Canada matchup on Thursday. There's some developments from injury standpoints. Quinn Hughes, I guess, is going to be with the team, and there's a chance it's a game time decision for whether or not he's going to play or not. Obviously, Charlie McAvoy, super bizarre situation, ended up in a hospital. The game's going to be in Boston, correct, on Thursday night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so he's
McAvoy's,
out. So.
McAvoy's officially been ruled out. But Hughes, remember, was going to be on the team, and then he was dealing with an injury, so that's why he was not with the team. And so now what Mike Sullivan said is that it'll take another injury on defense for Hughes to get into the game. So as of now, he's just there as a backup. But as long as no one else gets hurt, he's not playing. But
I think he practiced yesterday in a non-contact jersey, which I think is what Elliot Friedman reported. So you can check.
Yeah.
So the Kachuk brothers are both going to play. I know I can't remember which one was basically like took himself out of the game against Canada because he was banged up so much at the end of it there. But so let's start with looking at the matchup. So I guess my question is, the game on Saturday night was so special, so memorable, so fantastic, such great entertainment. 30 years of pent-up frustration released in 9 seconds. It was so great. And Adam and I talked about it a lot on the other one, but you and I have not talked about this yet. Does that take the pressure off from a fan standpoint on Thursday night? Like, we beat Canada and we beat their ass. Are we cool now if they come back and win the tournament? Does it matter which game you win if you win the first one and then lose the second one? Does that make sense? Like, beating them twice is a big ask in a tournament like this for anybody. And so the fact that they beat them already, are they playing with house money is sort of how I feel about this. I don't know. I'm having a tough time sort of looking at that game and feeling the way I did about the Saturday night game. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I mean, I think that that's a very level-headed way to look at it. I do not trust that most of the fans think that same way. I think that, how I look at it is, for so long, USA has kind of been little brother to Canada in terms of hockey and the talent that they've produced. And it's always been this very wide gap. It's Canada and then everyone else. And so it's like Canada's up here, the US is down here. I don't know, I think that we haven't had this best on best hockey for a while, so we haven't necessarily been able to confirm until now, but
USA's better.
Well, but we're looking, it's like, I don't know, better, as good as, I'm less concerned about that.
Sorry, I meant like we have improved. We are better than we used to be, is what I'm getting.
Yes, correct. And so that gap has gotten much smaller. And it's like we kind of know that from the eye test and just from seeing, but we haven't really had the quote unquote proof with like a best on best tournament to show that yes, they actually can field a team that can not only hang with Canada, but beat Canada. And so I think that, at certain areas, Canada still has slightly more offensive firepower than USA does. But I mean, like,
McJesus is pretty good.
Yeah, he's okay. He's fine. Did you see the goal he scored against USA on Saturday? That's just disgusting.
I did. Yes. Even though it was really tiny because Danielle Breezy was in my face the whole time.
Well, he undressed like three defensemen or three defenders, and then just made it look easy.
That's what he does, man. That's what he does.
I know. So it's when you have that guy, it's like, okay, well, USA doesn't have that,
no,
but
we don't.
But they have better goaltending. So.
Yes, we do, but significantly, and that's why you're out there in the streets trolling people. That's what you're doing. About goaltending for Canada. So again, are you like? How do you feel about Thursday night? Like, they have to win to make this a statement, to make it a real thing, or did they already do that on Saturday by physically and on the scoreboard beating Canada?
I think they did it on Saturday.
I think so too.
But I mean, I know a lot of people probably won't feel that way, but I think that they did it Saturday. They closed that gap. They closed the gap between the two and showed, hey, we're on the same level as these guys now.
Do I want to win Thursday? I do.
It'll depend too on, what happens with guys like the Kachucks were out in the last game. That seemed a little bit more precautionary. It seems like they're going to play. Austin Matthews was also out. I think that it kind of depends what happens injury wise for those guys. But overall, I think that, it's an important game. They're going to have Hellebuck back in net. They can
win. They can absolutely win.
Objectively a better goaltender than Jordan Binnington. Everyone needs to calm down about that.
You cannot tell Twitter to calm down. It's not going to work.
I didn't tell him to calm down. I told him to learn what sarcasm is, because
Teresa Walker agrees with you.
Yeah, so this was a whole thing that, like,
I love
people in Canada were upset about this, because and Hockey Canada has been under a lot of fire for a lot of different reasons lately, whether it's the sexual assault trial, the World Juniors team, like all of this. Like, no one's a fan of Hockey Canada right now. And then that continued with the building of the Four Nations roster for Canada when it came to the goaltending. And it's like, they're like, yes, Jordan Binnington is the best we have to offer. And everyone's like, have you seen Logan Thompson? Have you seen Mackenzie Blackwood? Like, you really think that Jordan Binnington is the best you have to offer? And they're out there like, yes, absolutely. So then when Jordan Binnington is letting in these easy goals, I go on Twitter with my trademark sarcasm and I say, just a reminder, Jordan Binnington was the best that Canada had to offer.
Drive the knife in deeper.
And people are so mean, dude. People are like, just a reminder, you don't know shit. I'm like, okay.
What did you
Like,
expect to happen? It is a place people it's just a dunk fest. It's a dunk contest. That's all it is. It's people dunking on each other. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's rude, sometimes it's stupid. You have to know what you're doing when you get into the sewers over there. You're bathing.
Well, no, and again, I didn't engage with anyone. It's not like I was responding to anyone in particular, but it was just like, "Woo, people, you need to calm down." They're like, "You don't know shit," and then they're taking shots at me about UC Saros, and I was like, "I didn't mention Saros. Like, I don't know what we're talking about here." It's
your brother. It's like I'm not defending UC Saros. I don't know him very well. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm not talking about UC Saros right now. Like, he's not even playing in this game. Like, what are we doing? So,
In either way, I had a ton of fun on Saturday night. We had my brother and sister-in-law over. We're over there like at the table playing games. The kids are over. It was just a ton of fun. And once the storm passed and I actually could watch the full screen, it was like, man, this was as enjoyable a hockey game from an international standpoint as I can ever remember. And as someone who loves World Cup soccer, I love, and I did ESPN on ESPN radio the last couple Sundays, and they were like, hey, and this is like same thing as Twitter. It's like hot take radio because that's the way radio is governed. For all of those you who need to understand how radio works, the medium dictates how the content is executed. It's very different than here in this format, and that is you need to create a topic that splits the audience, and you got to drive and the topic is how do we make the All-Star game better? And I'm like, because do what the Four Nations is doing, which is international best on best. People care about it. Players care about it. Hagel is fighting for the flag, not for the cameras, I think is the quote that he said after the fight. Like, that is what we want. And I think the NBA could do it. I think Major League Baseball does it with the World Baseball Classic. This Four Nations thing is great. And I wanted to sort of ask you and talk to you about sort of what the future of this event is. I'm not going to be picky about this, but they've got to change the name. I know they won't, but they need to. I know we had some comments on our post at Lower Broad Hockey about the Russian team playing. I think, obviously, I do not support Vladimir Putin or the Russian war in Ukraine, and I think that is absolutely a very serious topic that we can have a very complicated conversation about on another podcast. I don't disagree with any of that. Do I think the event needs to have countries that are worthy to play in it at some point? And yes, I think Russia needs to have a team. And I think there could be a sixth team that includes names like Leon Draisaitl and Roman Josi, because there's too many other good players not playing in the tournament. And I want best on best, and I want it to be international so that you're playing for your country. It is a little weird when you have to lump them all together. I do think that affects that sort of level of pride. But if you have 5 teams, including Russia, and then you do sort of like a, catch-all or an et cetera team or something with everybody else, maybe it could work. Because I think 4 is great. 6 would be even cooler because I think Russia's pretty good. I think they'd be as good as Finland probably. So that's number one is what, like, I don't know when it's coming back. Do you have any information? I don't know when the next one's going to be. They got the World Cup and then they got the Olympics. And so the question is sort of like, what would be your perfect schedule of all of these events? Like, could you rotate them all? Because the Olympics every 4, what's more important, World Cup? Do we want to have a juniors mixed in there because it's okay to throw the kids a bone every once in a while? Like, what's the right? Because this is great. This is a great event. It has been a great event. I can't wait for Thursday night. I'd like to see more of this, and I don't have a problem with it being in the middle of the season. I just don't. Like, take a break for 2 weeks, give everybody else a rest, and let the countries go to battle. I think it works pretty well, actually.
So you mentioned you got the Olympics that's next year, 26, and then the World Cup is coming back 2028. So what they're going to do is the idea is that every 2 years you're going to get best on best hockey in one form or another, whether it's World Cup or the Olympics. Beyond that, like most urgently, in the future, 2027, we don't know what's happening with that. So it could be something like this again. It could be, I don't know how you go back to an all-star game after this, but they might.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
No, I know, but I agree with you about Russia. My only thing is I don't see it happening because yes, this should have nothing to do with politics when
I get it.
You know, the NHL is not going to want that bad PR.
I get it. There's no, I totally understand, but you know what? They're just going to, Pete Hexet's going to give them everything they want. So it's okay. It's going to be over soon. So let's just move on.
Yeah. No,
it's obviously you obviously have to separate it. I'm just trying to do what's best for the event long term, right?
I agree with you. I think, because you don't want to have the same 4 nations every time either, because then it gets stale. But I think that you have, if you had a Russia, and then that's what I was kind of thinking too, if you did like a team Europe or like from other countries that are not represented.
How about Eurasia? How about you call it Eurasia, and that way you can get some of those players from, like, aren't there a couple of players from some of the stands in the NHL that are worthy of playing? I don't know where everybody's from. Like, I don't know who's good enough to make a roster. I can name the stars like Draisaitl and Yossi, but I don't know who's good enough to play.
I mean, Draisaitl, Yossi, Heischer, Natchez, guys like that. But I think that there would have to be a limit on it, that it can only be countries that aren't already represented.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
You can't have like a guy who was kind of good, but not good enough to make Team Finland. Totally. So anyway, I think because they did.
But there's nobody from Africa or Australia or South America, right? Do we have any players? So Eurasia would work, just Team Eurasia.
Yeah. So, but they did the Team North America at the World Cup a while back. People did not like it, but that was the concept, was like basically the B team of USA and Canada, who like didn't make the main team.
Right. That's not cool. What is the format of the World Cup? Remind me of the format of the World Cup.
What do you mean?
Like it's just like, is it truly a big bracketed country? Like, give me the format of it. Like, how does it?
I mean, they do kind of like the groups with the round robin, and then I don't know the exact.
So similar to a soccer World Cup, but smaller in scale.
Yeah, similar to the World Juniors and things like that. But I think, go ahead.
Well, why don't you just do Olympics every other year? It's this 4 nations thing, or I would call it like the international face-off or something, so that you don't limit the number of teams or whatever. 4 nation just seems like some group of people in a beige conference room came up with this, in a marketing meeting somewhere. But call it, like, if you went Olympics face-off, World Cup face-off, Olympics face-off. You could do the face-off every other year. You could do the World Cup every 4, and you could do the Olympics every 4. And then you've got an international best on best every year around this time. Fans understand that it's coming. Broadcasters and corporate sponsors know how to be a part of it and make money off of it. NHL makes money off of it. And the players all know what's going on. And because they know they've got this break every year, like it's sort of like the CMA Fest break for the Preds. Like, everyone knows they're going to go to Western Canada for like 9 days. Like, it's just what it is. And so I don't know. I think it's worth it because it grows the game, because it's been great. It's been a great tournament. And I'm glad Gover is finally on board, by the way.
Yeah, no, it has been a great tournament, and it's brought in, more fans too. Like, casual fans are getting into hockey now because it's, it's something for them to root for. They root for their country. And I think that looking at that going forward, if you're looking at ways, and Gover brought this up, and I don't think it's a bad idea, looking at ways to kind of mix it up so it's not the exact same event every time, would be maybe having different host cities. It's not always going to be Boston and Montreal. Maybe you do, like, I do think that it was good to have one in Canada and one in the US, I think, because you get those 2 fan bases involved. So it's like if you did I don't know, like Minnesota and Toronto or something like that. I don't know. I think that would be a good way to do it. I also, though, again, this is just me playing devil's advocate, because I know the NHL's concerns are about things that we've already seen, like Charlie McAvoy and Shea Theodore and potentially the Kachucks and Austin Matthews, that we're seeing these injuries happening now. Because guys do take this so seriously, which we want them to. It's not like friggin' Nikita Kucherov at the All-Star game looking like he's skating beer league because he's,
right.
they don't want to get hurt.
The Pro Bowl got worthless real fast. The NBA All-Star game is worthless because the score is like 215 to like 196. They don't even try to play defense, which I don't blame them for, frankly.
Yeah.
But this is just so much. It's just so good. And so I guess the only other question is, would the NHL or the Players Association be more on board if it was like in the summertime or at the, like, it's certainly not going to work at the end of a season. Could it work at the beginning of a season? Maybe. Could it happen maybe at Christmas break instead? I don't know. But that way it doesn't affect the trade deadline or the playoff push maybe as much. Could you do it around that time or Thanksgiving or something? Like, I don't know what the right answer is to try to help mitigate some of the risk. I think earlier in the year certainly does some of that, because right now, if Boston was a number 1 seed and they lose their top defenseman, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. So this close to the end of the season. But if you get hurt in, October, November, August, December, or whatever, you got a lot more time to recover. Do you think that there's a better time of the year to do it? Because it's always kind of been around this. Anything like this has always kind of been around this time.
No, I mean, there is no perfect solution to this. Like you said, there's going to be problems no matter what. You want like if you wait and do it during the summer, then that poses problems with the CBA, honestly, because the players are, they get the summer off. They have no obligations during the summer. And so they, and then, maybe they're not in game shape and you don't want them playing when they're not in game shape. But then the whole reasoning behind doing it at this time is, it's not quite halfway through the season. You're a little more than halfway through the season, but it's,
players need a break.
They need a break at this time. And so I think that the timing makes sense, but I also understand why, the downsides of having an in-season tournament like this. But like you said, I think it's funny, like the way that this tournament has brought in fans and kind of brought out new fandoms too. Like I was in Massachusetts watching the USA Canada game. And I was watching with my friends who are big Bruins fans because they live right outside of Boston. And my one friend is saying, man, like this whole tournament has completely, like, I've thrown my fandoms out the window. Like I hate Brad Marchand right now. It's like, yeah, rat needs cheese. I'm like, welcome to how the rest of the world outside of New England sees Brad Marchand. But it's like, it's fun, it's a good way to kind of get fans involved in it. And I think that they should find a way to keep doing this. I don't realistically ever see it happening at a different time of year, because it fits the most, because the Olympics are going to happen when the Olympics happen. Like the NHL doesn't get to change that. And so if you want to keep it consistent each year. So I think that, they got to figure out a way to keep doing this. I love your potential solution of adding a team Russia and a team, elsewhere in Europe.
Eurasia. Let's do Eurasia. I'm telling you.
But again, the NHL does not want that PR headache. It could also affect their, I don't know how there's, obviously they're working with the IOC on being part of the Olympics, and that could affect their good standing with the IOC if they start letting Russia do things. So it's a a rabbit hole that we don't need to get down. But
Brad, same. Brad says I could still hate Sidney Crosby. Yeah, same. Careful. Don't say that around Emma Lingan. I can't believe you're out here in the streets defending Sidney Crosby and UC Soros.
And I hate America too. That's
fine. Look, you want to root for Canada, it's fine. Canada's actually quite nice. It's quite a nice country, actually. I also think the timing, one of the things that's really important to think about this, because this is all a marketing, entertainment, and money-making thing here. It is what it is. Just like everything else in the history of sports. It's all about generating revenue and entertaining people. I do think the timing was perfect, because you gave guys, I think they should actually go to break like on Friday before the Super Bowl, because no one's going to watch your games, right? The games that happen on Friday and Saturday before the Super Bowl for the Preds, nobody watched them. I mean, Preds fans did, but like people aren't paying attention to the sport writ large. You know what you did well, though? You started it 3 days later when everyone's going through like, well, now what do we watch? Like everyone gets done with the Super Bowl, and after a few days of talking about Kendrick Lamar, everyone's like, well, what do we do now? And like that's why the Daytona 500 is every single weekend after the Super Bowl. This is not accidental. And starting on a Wednesday, following the Sunday, and sort of capturing our attention for about 8 or 9 days when we're all like in this attention void from a sports standpoint is perfect timing if you are trying to market it purely on a financial level. So just that is something that the NHL did very much on purpose. They absolutely put it on the Wednesday, starting the Wednesday, and then Saturday night, USA Canada. Was that an accident? Of course it wasn't an accident. The Saturday after the Super Bowl, you had one of the best hockey games in 30 years in this country. Not an accident. And so that is what I really like about the timing of it, is that we are all going through football withdrawals in this 2-week period of time. And we got this really cool thing that's like, it's unique. It's once a year or once every 2 years or whatever. And I think that, like, I talk to a lot of folks about the World Cup in soccer, and I'm always like, why aren't we doing this every 2 years? And a lot of soccer people are like, well, it's just, the EPL schedule and the European leagues and you got to build a roster, and then a lot of complaining. And I'm like, every 2 years would be great. Women's World Cup every 2 years also. It would be amazing. I know why the soccer, it takes a year and a half to build up who's going to make it. And I'm like, well, we don't have to do that. You could just put them in there. So I think more of this stuff would be great. Olympics, face-off, World Cup, face-off, Olympics, alternate, do something like this every year. I don't need an all-star game. I don't watch the NBA all-star game. I don't watch the Pro Bowl. I don't watch Major League Baseball all-star game anymore. You know what people do like, though? People like the home run derby. They still watch that. At MLS, the skills challenge for MLS is getting tons of ratings right now because it's like goalies trying to score on each other from like midfield and stuff.
They need to reformat the home run derby. But yes, that is the best part of the MLB All-Star festivities, or it could be. But again, they need to reformat it. The bracket format is stupid.
I totally agree with you. They've tweaked that a lot over the years. But the point is what is popular is gimmicky, and people don't like that word. But the reason Unrivaled is doing so well is because it's a little gimmicky. It's an hour long. It's 3-on-3. The court's a little smaller, and it's been very successful. You find the reason 3-on-3 hockey is so successful is it's a little gimmicky, but it's a really good, effective, fun, entertaining way to settle the game. That's better than the shootout, right? So I think, and again, by the way, that's the one rule change I would make in the NHL right now today is 10-minute 3-on-3. No more shootouts.
For sure. We saw that in the Canada-Sweden game. They had the 10-minute 3-on-3. It was like, why are we not doing this? Like, this is awesome.
Adam likes the 4-column, it's just the 4-column win-loss records. You on board? You on board with that? You on board with incentivizing a team to try to win in regulation is what he's talking about, I guess.
I could be. It's just a little bit of a brain bender right now because it's not something I'm used to. It's if I got used to it, I'd be like, okay, I could see that. I mean, it makes sense for this tournament, and because there's only like a select few games that you have to keep track of. I don't know that I would want it for the NHL like for a full season because that would be a lot. But no, we tried
the 4-number thing. It didn't work. Here's what I would do. I think there is, and this is an American problem, I think, to some degree, that like you can't have ties. Like ties are un-American. It's like, well, if the Predators and the Blackhawks play 60 minutes of hockey, and then they play 10 more minutes of 3-on-3 hockey, and it's tied, you just had a tie game. Like you're just even at that point. Like there wasn't a winner. Nobody was better than the other team. I would be fine with 10-minute 3-on-3, no shootouts, 3 columns, wins, losses, ties. That's it. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. I don't need overtime losses and regulation wins. It's like, no, you either win the game or you lose the game or you play 70 minutes and you're both even, in which case you both get a point, shut up and go home. Like that's so simple to me.
I don't have a problem with it, to be honest. Like I think that that's fine, but like you said, people don't like having ties, and I don't know.
Ties are fine.
Ties are fine. If you're gonna have the loser point in overtime, why not just like
a loser point?
Allow ties.
I mean, like loser point.
If you lose in overtime, you get a point.
I know
And
you do.
so, like, eliminate that. And instead, if you tie, you get a point.
Yeah.
And if you lose, whether it's
Right.
overtime or
Right.
regulation. Yes.
0 points for losing. 0.
I'm with you. That's also, if you want to talk about un-American. But I mean,
participation trophy. You guys tied, but not all the way to the end, just like most of the way.
Yeah. No, I just think that, like, get rid of the loser point. You have,
Agree.
wins in regulation, and then wins in overtime. Wait,
No,
would
just
you
wins.
have?
You just win.
Wins. Okay. Okay.
It doesn't matter when you win or how you win. If you have more goals than the other team when the clock is done running, you have won the game.
Okay. So
And I'm not doing this face to you. I'm saying this is like
no.
to the NHL.
I know. I'm just making sure I understand what you're proposing. So you have 2 points for winners, 0 points for losers, 1 point if you tie.
So complicated. It's so complicated.
I don't have a problem with it.
And again, 10 minutes is so much more entertaining than the 5 minutes it takes everyone to do a shootout. And it's more real hockey, so it's more accurate to decide who the winner is.
Yeah.
And the facts of the matter are, if you play 70 minutes, if two teams play a 70-minute event, and at the end, like if me and my buddy go to the bar and we play darts for 70 minutes and we are still tied, it was just a tie.
Yeah.
Like we just were the same that night. Like sometimes he beats me, sometimes I beat him, but tonight 70 minutes of darts, dead even. Still searching for that second bullseye. Yeah, we're just even that night. We had a tie. It was a tie. It's okay. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages, and make sure you read Emma in all of her sarcasm font on the internet. Where can they do that?
Only if you're gonna be nice to me. You can do that on
you need
Twitter at Emma_Lingan. You can also find my work at the Hockey News and at Lower Broad Hockey every Friday.
Say only nice things to Emma, guys. Come on. I know all of you will in the comments there. By the way, George, good to see you. Good to see you, George, Kevin, Josh, Brad, all you guys. Always a pleasure talking with you guys. Do appreciate it. All right. I think that's about it for us. Make sure you check out Emma's weekly newsletter, of course, as she just mentioned on Lower Broad Hockey. Adam Vingan wrote a story, Emma. How about that? He wrote a story over the weekend. How about that? So go check that out. Hope everybody enjoyed my conversation with Hal Gill as well. Long-form conversation, got really into the weeds on what a zone shrink is, like the differences between a zone shrink and a man-to-man defensive scheme. We talked a lot about Brady Shea, a lot about all the other young prospects, Stasny, Blankenberg, Willsby, etc. So make sure you go check that out. And we do appreciate all you guys supporting local small businesses like Lower Broad Hockey, like 440 Sports, like Sinkers Beverages, like all the work that Emma's doing, and like Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Other than that, have a great weekend. Go USA. Although, Emma, I know you're rooting for Canada. So
I'm rooting for good hockey. I want a good game.
Oh, you sound like my 8-year-old. Who are you rooting for, Dad? Overtime. That's what she's rooting for. I'm rooting for United States of America. We start unnecessary trade war.
Oh Lord.
Sorry.
Nothing good can come from me saying anything right now. So I'm just not.
For Emma, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you guys next time.